Good morning, this is Nicholas from Gandora Gaming, and I'm here to discuss a new product coming from the One Piece card game, that being the Ultimate Deck. This is a brand new starter deck that is coming out in November for the TCG that has 3 different powerful leaders inside, revolving around the purple and red colors. Those being Monkey D. Luffy, Trafalgar Law, and Eustace Kid. And all 3 of these leaders and the new cards that come out in this set have meta implications going forward for the TCG and OCG metas. So let's discuss this, the new cards, the leaders, and their impact on the meta going forward. So first things first, we gotta start off with our protagonist, Monkey D. Luffy. He is red, purple, straw hat, 6,000 power, 3 life. During your main phase, once per turn, if you have 0 Dawn or 8 or more Dawn on the field, you can add 1 Dawn from your deck to your hand as active. Really powerful effect. Basically says, hey, if you get to 8 Dawn before your opponents, you just go straight to 10. Really good. Helps you go second. So you go 2, 4, 6, 8, and then you just go straight to 9. If you're going first, you go from 1 Dawn to 3 Dawn to 5 Dawn to 7 Dawn to 9 Dawn. And then you are able to use his ability to get straight to 10 Dawn, which is very good for Luffy because he can then use that 10 Dawn to cheat out some really powerful monsters, which we'll discuss in a little bit. Luffy is a very powerful leader. He is 6,000 attack. Yes, he only has 3 life, which is probably the lowest life of any leader we've seen in the game so far. But as we've seen from Edward Newgate, who is Whitebeard, 3 life does not matter because he's 6,000 power. 6,000 power leader is huge for the game. Most attackers and leaders are 5,000 power, meaning that this guy with no Dawn is swinging at 6,000 to a 5,000 every turn, which is absolutely incredibly hard, and every 5,000 your opponent has needs a Dawn on them, including the leader, just to attempt to go for life against your monsters or leader. Very powerful, very substantial, and unlike Edward Newgate, you can play purple in this deck, and you don't have the drawback of Newgate, where every turn you keep adding life back to your hand until you have 0 life. In this case, you don't have to worry about that. You have, yes, only 3 life, but you have multiple ways to protect yourself with 2k counters, and ultimately it is going to be a very meta-defining leader going forward, and can definitely push the red-purple strategy to its absolute limits. The next leader I want to discuss today is Eustace Kid, red-purple leader. He is the Kid Pirates with 5,000 power and 5 life. During your turn, if you have 4 or more life, the leader loses 1,000 power. That's his restriction. And then when he attacks -1 Dawn, this leader gains 2,000 power for the turn. So the reason why he has his restriction is because he is a red-purple leader that has 5 life. That is a very big deal because most split leaders, when multiple or multicolored leaders, must have a restriction placed on them or have 4 or less life. For example, the only multi-set leaders that have 5 life that have been revealed so far usually have a restriction where their leader can't attack. For example, I believe Rebecca and what's it called? Vivi are both leaders that are like, oh, we have 5 life and we're split colors, but we as leaders cannot attack. So the fact that he can attack means he needs a restriction on him for having 5 life and being multicolored. And his restriction is until he gets down to 3 life, he is going to be minus 1,000 power. So he's always going to be 4,000 attack, which sucks because all leaders are a bare minimum 5,000, meaning that he is always going to be swinging up at them. But luckily his ability just says, hey, -1 Dawn, and he gains 2,000 power for the turn. I do wish it was for your turn and your opponent's turn, but hey, what can you do? It's a very powerful effect that definitely pushes for game. Basically, for 1 Dawn, you get 2,000 power, which is the equivalent of 2 Dawn on him, which is really strong. So once you get down into the later games, He's already going to be a 5,000 attack, so just a -1 Dawn. He's going to be a 7k leader attacking into whatever leader or character he wants, which is very, very scary for your opponent. Not to mention, with the other cards revealed for Eustace S. Kid, I think that he's fine having it only for his turn. The final leader we must discuss today is Trafalgar Law. He is a red-purple leader with only 4 life and 5,000 power. During the main phase, once per turn, you return 3 of your Dawn back to your deck, or your Dawn deck, and then you shuffle back one of your opponent's characters with 3,000 power or less to the bottom of their deck, and then play a 4 cost or lower from your hand. Now, this sounds like a very big minus because you have to return 3 Dawn, but unlike Crocodile, purple has a really good way of regaining Dawn, especially with the cards revealed in this set for Trafalgar Law. So this is actually a very, very powerful effect. The whole play style of Law is that you want to lower the power of your opponent's monsters to then shuffle them back to deck with your leader's ability, summon out your level 4s once you do that, because Law's effect says once you shuffle back, you get a free special summon of a level 4, and then level 4 can then add you back to Dawn you just used, meaning you're never really losing Dawn, and you're always keeping up with your opponent, and you're shuffling back your opponent's monsters. It's a very, very scary leader, and Monkey D. Luffy, Law, and Eustace are going to be huge meta-defining decks going forward, especially Law himself. I've seen this deck in action, and it is absolutely terrifying when it goes off. One of the main combos for Law is that you will shuffle back a lower cost monster. Don't forget you can also lower your opponent's monsters with other monster effects or spells. And then once they're lowered and you shuffle it back into the deck, you get to special summon a card like Beppo, which we'll go over in a little bit. And Beppo will regain you Dawn, which is very, very powerful. So basically you get a free 5,000 beat stick, a shuffle back a card in your opponent's field, and you get your Dawn back. So you're still keeping up with your opponent, and very, very threatening boards are following. So these are the 3 leaders. Now I'm going to go over the individual cards that come out in this set that are absolutely insane, and just going forward for all red and purple decks, you must play these cards because these cards are just absolutely insane. Alright, so I'm going to start with Monkey D. Luffy cards and then work our way down to Law and see how these cards stack up against the current cards in the meta. So first things first, we have Sanji. This is a red cost, 6,000 power, 6,000 attack strike character. On play, if your opponent has a character with 5,000 power or more, this character gains rush for this turn. Also, he has 1,000 counter. This card is absolutely insane. Simple fact, it is a level 6 rush character. Basically means this card can replace the Monkey D. Luffy 5 cost, because this guy has a counter and he's just really, really good in general. Just for the simple fact that he has a counter, so he's not a brick in hand, and ultimately he's just a really, really good card. By the time you get to 6 Dawn in order to summon Sanji, your opponents most likely already have summoned a 5k beat stick, meaning this guy is not going to only have rush, but he's also just going to be a really, really powerful character to set up. Don't forget Monkey D. Luffy with no Dawn on him is already a 6,000 attack leader, so attacking for 2 6,000s on your opponent is going to be a very devastating push, and definitely really good when it comes to pressuring his life. The next card we have is Jinbei. Red cost, 2 power, 2,000 attack, strike, 1 Dawn. When attacking, give one of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power this turn, counter 2,000. This card's really, really good. For example, this is a searchable 2,000 counter off Nami. Not to mention, when this card attacks, you just give 2,000 power to a character, which is really, really good. If you were playing this in Law, which most likely you will, Law says, hey, return a 3,000 power on the field back into deck. So this card says, hey, lower it by 2,000, then use Law's effect, lower it by just send it back to deck, which is really, really powerful. So I think Jinbei has huge potential, not only in Monkey D. Luffy, but also in the Law deck, and just any red deck in general. It is just a 2,000 counter, so it's always going to be a good card in hand to discard. Not to mention, it's really good on field as well, so really, really good card in general. All right, and finally, we have Monkey D. Luffy. This is a red character, cost 10, 11,000 power, strike, rush character. Once per turn, after your opponent activates a blocker, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 8,000 power or less. This card is absolutely insane. Out of all the cards that we are going to discuss today, this card is probably has the highest ceiling. It is a 10,000 cost rush character that is searchable off Nami, that literally says, hey, if your opponent attempts to block me, because you know I have rush, and then usually when you're summoning him, your opponent's already going to be low on life. If your opponent attempts to block me or block any of my characters or leaders, basically you get the KO up to an 8,000 cost character on field, which is devastating to your opponent. That is a very, very powerful effect on a rush character. And this card is absolutely insane against blue and just any deck that has a blocker on field. Your blocker becomes useless because if you have a blocker and another beat stick on field, if you attempt to block a Luffy or any of the attacks that are about to happen, the Luffy will KO your opponent's character with 8,000 or less power, which is absolutely insane. Also, I believe if you have multiple Monkey D. Luffys on field, this ability stacks. So if you block just once, you get to KO up to 2 to 3 characters, depending on how many Luffys you have on field, which is absolutely insane. And this is a must-have card you must play in red, especially if you're playing the Straw Hat package, because it's searchable off Nami. It's a rush with 10,000 cost. It's just a really, really good game ender. Very, very powerful card, and is definitely going to see some meta potential going forward. This thing beats Shanks just because it's searchable, and it just says, hey, your opponent blocks, KO anything. Really, really powerful effect, especially if you already lower the cost of one of their 10k leaders. That basically means, hey, you get to KO one of their 10 drops, which is really, really strong. So this card is absolutely insane, and I can definitely see it going forward as a staple in red decks. Now we also have the event cards that we must discuss. We have 2 new event cards for Luffy. We have Gum Gum Kong Gatlin. This is the new Red Rock. Basically, it's a red event, 5 costs, Straw Hat card, so it's searchable off Nami. During the main phase, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 7,000 power or less. And then if this card is hit off your life, trigger till the end of this turn, your leader gains 1,000 power. This is a very insane card. Not only does this is this a searchable card off Nami, but it KOs any monster with 7,000 or less power, which is absolutely absurd. And then, if this card's hit off your life, your leader gains 1,000 power until the end of the turn, which is really good with Luffy, because Luffy is already a 6 cost. So when this hits the field, your character will gain another 1,000 power to the end of the turn. So your leader will be 7,000 power. And for most decks, hitting a 7k consistency multiple times is going to be really, really hard, especially when you have a lot of 2k counters in hand. This card is going to be a really, really threatening card for a lot of decks, and it really devastates a lot of boards. Imagine they summon a Big Mom, and you just go Gum Gum King Gone. Before he even has a chance to attack, you already KO'd the thing. Really, really insane card. Yes, that thing has 8,000 power, but don't forget, you can always lower the Big Mom and then blow it up. Really, really good card in general. We also have another 1 cost Gum Gum Giant Thrust. This is basically gives a leader or character 2,000 power during a battle, and then KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 2,000 power or less. Really, really good card in general, just for the simple fact that not only does it give a character or leader 2,000 power for the cost of 1 Dawn, but also if your opponent has a level 2 or lower card on field, for example, a blocker, a Nami, any like searcher card, any of the low level dudes, this thing just KOs it, which is really, really good, especially against decks like Law, Red Greenlaw to be exact, because they want to use the little dudes and keep bouncing them back to hand in order to get their events. They keep getting searches. So this card says, hey, I gained 2,000 power, protected myself, and I blew up your character, which is really, really good. Now it's time to go over Eustace Kid. Kid has multiple characters we had to discuss. First, we have Killer. This is a purple 5-cost, 6,000 power slash character. Your opponent's during your opponent's turn, during your turn once per turn, when a Dawn is returned from your field to the Dawn deck, KO up to one of your opponent's characters rested with a cost 3 or less. Also, this character has a 1,000 counter. This is a solid card. Basically, for a 5-cost 6,000, it doesn't have rush like the Sanji does, but if you return a Dawn with Kid's ability, basically you get to KO rested 3 costs or less characters, which is really, really good, especially if your opponent already attacked with a higher tech monster. You just lower the cost, meaning the second you have this guy on field and you use Kid's ability to return a Dawn to gain 2,000 power, this card will then KO their character, which is really, really strong. Not to mention, worst comes to worst, it is a 1,000 counter, so you can't discard it just to protect yourself, which is really, really good. The next character we gotta discuss is... Alright, let's keep going. So the next monster we must discuss today is Heat. Heat is a purple 3-cost, 4,000 power, and basically on your turn, once per turn, when a Dawn is returned to the Dawn deck from the field, this character gains 2,000 power until the end of the next turn, and it has a counter of 1,000. So basically it's a 3-cost. When you activate the effect to return a Dawn back to the extra deck, then this guy will become a 6,000 until the end of your opponent's turn, which is actually a pretty solid effect on a level 3 beat stick. Worst comes to worst, it is a 1,000 counter, and basically what's going to happen is that you're going to use Kid's ability, make him, Kid's going to become a 7,000, and then this guy, because you activate Kid's effect, is going to become a 6,000, which is very scary against your opponent, that they just summon a 3-cost, and then as long as this 3-cost sticks on the field, and then it becomes a 6k, and it stays a 6k until your opponent's next turn. And as long as you keep using Kid's effect, this guy is forever going to be a 6k, which is pretty dangerous. My only issue is that because he's a 3-cost and only 4,000 power from the start, that means that if your opponent has removal in the form of KOing in black, and red has a lot of KOing cards as well, there's a lot of ways to get rid of low attack monsters. So there's my guy. This might not be able to stick on the field, so I don't know how good he will be going forward, but I definitely think on concept he's really strong. Now this is the card we must talk about. This is the Eustace Kid, and this card is absolutely insane. It is a cost 7 purple card, 8,000 power. On play or when attacking, -1 Dawn. Your leader gains 1,000 power until the end of your opponent's turn. This card is absolutely insane. Not only on summon does it just make your leader gain 1,000 power, but then as every turn goes by, you just use its effect and it'll gain another 1,000 power until the end of your opponent's turn, which is really good. So if you're playing this in Kid, your Kid becomes a 6k, and then it also becomes an 8k on your turn. So it'll be 8k on your turn, not counting Dawn you stacked onto him. I mean, he'll be a 6k during your opponent's turn, which is really insane. But if you play this in Monkey D. Luffy, your Monkey D. Luffy will become a 7k and will stay a 7k onto your opponent's turn, which is absolutely insane. This card is going to be a staple of purple decks. This card is really good. The only way this would be better is if it had a 1,000 counter, but it doesn't. And it's just really insane. Alright, so for the next character we gotta discuss, his name is Wire. He is a 3-cost, 3,000 power blocker. And once returned, if a Dawn is returned to the Dawn deck, draw 1, discard 1, and this card has a 1,000 counter, which is pretty solid. Wire is interesting just because he is a blocker, which is really good, and he gets passive effects when you activate your leader effect or you activate the 7-drop effect. So basically, you're gonna summon him, use your leader effect, and then you get to draw one, discard one because this guy's on field, which is pretty solid, especially for a blocker. And then finally we have Punk Vice, which is a purple event cost 3. It basically says during the main phase, rest one of your opponent's characters with 2 or less costs, then add one Dawn deck from your Dawn deck as rested, and then if this is triggered from your life, add one Dawn from your Dawn deck as active. Really solid effects. Not only does it rest blockers and just 2K monsters in general, but it also gets you Dawn, which is really important. Alright, so now it's time to go over Laws cards. First things first, we have John Bart. This is a purple 4 cost, 5,000 power, strike character with a counter of 1,000. On play, rest one Dawn. You may add up to one of your Dawn from your Dawn deck as active. So that's actually really good on your turn 5. Basically, once you get past turn 5, or when you have at least 5 Dawn, you summon this guy, rest the Dawn to gain a active Dawn, so it pays for itself. I mean, you can use that active Dawn in order to ultimately keep going, which is really strong, and it definitely helps you pay for the cost of Law, because Law is going to be paying a lot of Dawn every turn to bounce back level 3 or lower characters. So this card literally recoups your Dawn, which is really swell. Next we have Sashi and Penguin. These are purple 4 costs, 5,000 power. These are ranged characters, 2,000 counter, by the way. That's pretty solid. On play, if there are 3 or less Dawn on the field, you may add up to 2 of your Dawn from Dawn deck to your hand as rested. This is an amazing card with Law's ability. So basically, let's say it's turn 4. You have 4 Dawn because you went second. You can use Law's ability. First you can put that 4 Dawn on a character. Then you can return 3 Dawn back with Law's ability, balance a level 3 or lower character. Then, with Law's ability, summon out Sashi and Penguin, and Sashi and Penguin will then trigger on summon. If you have 3 or less Dawn, gain 2 Dawn. So you'll pay for your cost basically, which is really solid. So Sashi and Penguin is a must-have 4 of in the deck when it comes to Law, especially. This card is absolutely amazing. Next we have is Beppo. Beppo is a purple 4 cost, 5,000 power strike character. On play or when attacking, if you have less Dawn than your opponent does, basically you get to add 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck as rested, and he has a cost of 1,000 counter. So that's a really solid effect. So basically, Beppo says if your opponent has more Dawn than you, on summon or when he attacks, you just gain a Dawn back, which is really solid. So you can go normal summon Beppo, gain a Dawn because your opponent will, or maybe you won't gain a Dawn on normal summon, whatever. If your opponent has more Dawn than you, that'd be great. So you can just normal summon, get a Dawn, then return 3 Dawn, bounce a card, summon out Sashi and Penguin, and then go off from there, which is really solid. So must have 4 of that deck as well. And then finally we have Trafalgar Law. This is a purple 4 cost, 5,000 slash character, 1,000 counter blocker. On play, -1 Dawn. If your opponent has 7 or more cards in hand, you rip 2 cards out of their hand randomly. This is a really amazing effect. So basically, your opponent is just screwed. If your opponent has 7 more cards in hand and you summon out this Law, who's a blocker, by the way, you just rip 2 cards out of their hand, which is absolutely insane. One of the biggest issues in One Piece decks is that if you hit their life too quickly, they have too many cards in hand, and it's like a nightmare just trying to hit them again. They just have too much card advantage on you. But Trafalgar Law punishes them for their card advantage, which is really insane. I think every purple deck going forward is going to be playing Trafalgar Law. And if Law gets more searchability cards, the Heart Pirates are going to be a really powerful package going forward for purple decks. But that's really about it. How do I think about all 3 of these leaders and their new cards? I think they're absolutely insane. I think purple is finally rising back into the meta with the help of red cards. And purple red is going to be the new new deck to beat. This is going to be a very scary format. It's coming out during set 4, I believe. So we will have other purple leaders in the form of green, purple Doflamingo and purple and yellow crocodiles. So we'll just have to see how it goes.